All right, everybody. So we are going to go over the greenhouse gas and effect questions, starting with number one. It says, which diagram best represents how greenhouse gases in our atmosphere trap heat? All right. So if we can just do a recap on what is the greenhouse effect. So the greenhouse effect is pretty much describing how greenhouse gases are basically helping keep the earth warm. All right. So this is what the greenhouse effect is. You have incoming solar radiation, right? So energy that comes from the sun, it comes to the ground, it hits the earth's surface, right? And so by doing that, it warms the earth's surface. Then what ends up happening, and sometimes you can get some of that energy being reflected as shown here, right? And it's showing where energy can be reflected by the clouds as well too. What's important though, however, is that when you have energy that comes from the sun and it hits the earth's surface, the earth absorbs that energy, all right? The earth absorbs that energy on the ground. After they absorb that energy, then what ends up happening, as shown here, they release that energy back into the atmosphere. They release the energy back into the atmosphere. So the first step, greenhouse gases, solar radiation comes in, absorbs the energy on the ground, and then the earth says, you know what, let me release, as shown here, let me release that energy back into the atmosphere, right? And it releases it in the form of infrared radiation. So, however, you can also, what ends up happening is you get a greenhouse gas, right? So there are greenhouse gases that are located here, okay? Greenhouse gases that are located. And the job of a greenhouse gas is to absorb that infrared radiation and to pour it back down to the earth. And that's how it helps it keep the earth warm. Some of that radiation that wants to be released from the surface of the earth, right? Some of it escapes, but some of them, they get absorbed by the greenhouse gas, and then the greenhouse gas decides to say, hey, let me re-radiate it back to the ground. And that is what the greenhouse effect is. So when we go back to our problem for the greenhouse effect, it's like we just said, energy that comes from the sun. So we have to remember, visible light is energy that comes from the sun. Most of it is in the form of visible light. So that means we can cross out C and B because it has to show energy from the sun is in the form of visible light, right? Short wavelength radiation. That's the first thing. The second thing that we know is that when it passes through, let me cross this out, When it passes through the atmosphere, it first gets absorbed by the ground, right? After it gets absorbed by the ground, then the earth releases infrared radiation to the atmosphere. Then it gets absorbed in the earth's atmosphere. What does it get absorbed by? Greenhouse gases. Greenhouse gases. And that's why the correct answer is choice A. All right, number two. Number two says most of the infrared radiation given off by the Earth's surface is absorbed in Earth's atmosphere by greenhouse gases such as water vapor, carbon dioxide. And when we look at our notes, right, and this is something we definitely want to take a look. A greenhouse gas is a gas that absorbs terrestrial, meaning from the Earth, infrared radiation, such as carbon dioxide, water vapor, and methane. These are your three main greenhouse gases. And so that's why the correct answer is choice D. All right, number 3. Number 3 says, there we go. Increasing the amount of carbon dioxide. Increasing the amount of carbon dioxide in Earth's atmosphere increases atmospheric temperature because the carbon dioxide absorb what? So we have to remember carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas. All right, do not forget that carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas. All right, it's a greenhouse gas. And what do we know about greenhouse gases? Well, greenhouse gases, they absorb terrestrial radiation. All right, they absorb terrestrial infrared radiation. Remember, infrared radiation is also known as heat. So they're gases that absorb heat and re-radiate it back to the ground. That's something to keep in mind. All right. So what does it absorb? As we just saw in our notes, it says a gas that absorbs terrestrial infrared radiation. So carbon dioxide is a gas that absorbs, like we just said, terrestrial infrared radiation. Okay, so basically the radiation that comes from the Earth. So this is the Earth's surface, right? This is where we are. The Earth gives off terrestrial infrared radiation, and that's something that greenhouse gases, I'll call it the greenhouse gas. They absorb it. They absorb it, and then they re-radiate it back to the ground. All right, number 4. Okay. Oop. So number 4 says, which diagram best shows how air inside a greenhouse warms as a result of energy from the sun, right? So when you go into a greenhouse, right, it's very warm in a greenhouse. The greenhouse effect explains as to why. Remember what we discussed earlier. In a greenhouse effect, we have energy in the form of light. Let's see, this is right. Oh, let me just go to my notes right here. Boom. There we go. So in a greenhouse effect, we have do it like here we go. All right. We have energy that comes from the sun. It passes through the glass, right? When it passes through the glass, it gets absorbed from the ground. Once it gets absorbed from the ground, then at that point, the ground releases infrared radiation, right? Some of that infrared radiation escapes outside, but some of it gets reflected from the glass and goes towards back inside, keeping greenhouses warm. So which option shows that where light rays, right, are coming through one side of the glass, and then we have infrared rays that's coming from the ground, and the glass is reflecting. The glass is reflecting infrared radiation back to the greenhouse, and that is choice C. Number 5, it says the diagram below shows a greenhouse, right? So you have insulation coming on one side, right? The clear glasses that's occurred from a greenhouse. That's on the greenhouse. So it says, what is the primary function of the clear glass of the White House? Of the greenhouse. I apologize. All right. So remember, if we remember what was discussed before, right? We have visible light that passes through the greenhouse. It gets absorbed by the ground. The ground then, hold on, sorry. Right, sunlight passes through. It hits the ground. Then after that, the ground releases infrared radiation. Okay. Some of the infrared radiation escapes through, but the glass reflects some of that infrared radiation back down. Okay. So what is the primary function of the clear glass? The glass allows short wave wavelengths of radiation, which, for example, is visible light, right? Visible light is one of them, to enter, but reduces the amount of long wavelength radiation that escapes. Remember, one example of a long wavelength radiation is the infrared radiation that comes from the Earth. All right. Infrared radiation that comes from Earth. So the correct answer is choice C. All right. Number 6. So number 6 says the graph shows a change in carbon dioxide concentrations in Earth's atmosphere over a 140-year period. Carbon dioxide concentrations are shown in parts per million ppm. And so it gives us a chart of the carbon dioxide concentration. Just remember carbon dioxide, we also know it as CO2. All right. So it says this significant change in CO2 concentration is most likely caused by what? So this is just something that you just need to know, right? If we know anything about fossil fuels, right, the burning of fossil fuels, you can look it up. But basically, most electricity is still generated by the burning of fossil fuels, right? And so when we're burning fossil fuels, what ends up happening is it's producing greenhouse gases. It's producing greenhouse gas. So when we're using these fossil fuels, it's producing greenhouse gases. All right. And what ends up happening if you have more greenhouse gases, the earth is going to get warmer and warmer. And so that's why the answer is choice C. All right. So number 7, number 8. It says, based on answers to questions 7 and 8 on the diagram below, which shows incoming solar radiation passing through the glass of a greenhouse and then striking the floor. Number 7 says, describe one, right? So only one way. You don't got to write a whole paragraph. It says, just describe one way the glass in the greenhouse acts like the greenhouse gases in the Earth's atmosphere. All right. How does this glass act like a greenhouse gas in the Earth's atmosphere? So these are what you could have written down for number 7, right? If you said, well, the glass traps heat, that would have been fine. If you said it prevents some terrestrial radiation from escaping, if you also said it prevents some infrared radiation from escaping as well, that's fine. And if you said it allows most solar radiation to pass through, right? That is also fine as well. You could have said any one of these options for your answer. All right, some of the income solar radiation is absorbed by the floor. Identify the type of electromagnetic energy re-radiated by the floor. All right. So it's saying some of the incoming solar radiation, right? Some of the income solar radiation that is coming in is absorbed by the floor. It says identify the type of electromagnetic energy re-radiated by the floor. All right. So what page in the reference table even talks about electromagnetic energy that's being re-radiated by the floor? All right. So the electromagnetic energies is all listed right here. This is all of them. Okay. It's an invisible light, sorry. All right. These are the 7. And so we know one of these 7, right, is going to be an energy that is re-radiated back by the floor. So when we take a look, let me go to number 8. So they're talking about what type of energy gets released back from the floor, from the earth, right? And so your best answer would be what, everybody? Infrared radiation. All right, your answer has to be infrared radiation. You can't say heat, right? It says they identify the type of electromagnetic energy, infrared radiation. That is what's being released from the floor. All right, that's it for today. Have a wonderful, blessed day. Make sure to like and subscribe for more content and materials. Take care, everybody. God bless.